Let me tell you something. There's a certain look I see in people's eyes when they talk about what they used to dream about. That slight dimming, that quiet resignation. Well, I'm too old for that now. And every time I hear those words, something in me stirs. Because what if? What if that belief isn't just a thought? What if it's actually a prison you've built around yourself, brick by brick, year after year, without even realizing it? Most folks walk around carrying the weight of their age like it's some kind of sentence. They've internalized these boundaries, these invisible lines that say what's possible and what's not at 40, 50, 60, beyond. They look at the calendar, count the years, and slowly start closing doors that were never actually locked. They shrink their world, limit their reach, convince themselves that certain dreams have expiration dates. And society just nods along, reinforces it, makes it seem like the natural order of things. But you, deep down, you sense there's something off about this whole arrangement. You feel that spark that refuses to die, that whispers maybe, just maybe, the rules you've been following aren't actually rules at all. Maybe they're just stories. Stories that have been told so many times they feel like truth, but are actually just elaborate fictions. And that's why you're here, because you're ready to examine the real reasons you've been holding back. Not the surface-level excuses about age, but the deeper, hidden mechanisms that have been working behind the scenes. It's not just about feeling younger or denying the passage of time. No, it's about understanding the profound neurological, social, and psychological forces that have convinced you to voluntarily sideline yourself from your own life. And more importantly, it's about reclaiming the power that's always been yours. So stay with me, because we're about to pull back the curtain on why that feeling of being too old has such a grip, and more importantly, how you can systematically dismantle its power over you. The path to freedom from age-based limitations, it starts now. We're going deep. How your brain creates an age identity that silently sabotages your potential. Let's start with something fundamental. This feeling, this belief that you're too old for certain pursuits, it's not just a casual thought that pops into your head. It's actually a complex neurological construct, what scientists call an age identity, that your brain has been building and reinforcing for decades. And once established, this identity works tirelessly behind the scenes, filtering your perceptions, limiting your options, and ultimately sabotaging your potential, all without you even realizing it's happening. The neuroplasticity limitation. Your brain is remarkably adaptable, constantly rewiring itself based on your experiences and beliefs. This is neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural connections throughout life. But here's the thing, this incredible capacity for change doesn't operate in a vacuum. It's heavily influenced by the stories you tell yourself. And one of the most powerful stories is the one about what's appropriate for your age. When you repeatedly think, "I'm too old to learn that," or "that's for younger people," you're not just having a passing thought. You're actually creating and strengthening neural pathways that make those limitations feel like objective reality. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy at the neurological level. Your brain begins to filter opportunities through this lens, automatically dismissing possibilities that don't fit your age script. The tragedy is that your brain's capacity for growth and adaptation, its neuroplasticity, remains robust well into your later years. The limitation isn't biological, it's self-imposed through these internalized narratives. Research from neuroscientists studying cognitive aging has revealed a fascinating distinction. There's chronological aging, the simple passage of time, and then there's neurological self-limitation, which is entirely different. People who maintain a flexible age identity show significantly greater cognitive adaptation and learning capacity than those who rigidly adhere to age-based expectations, even when their chronological age is identical. Your neural age script isn't destiny. It's a pattern that can be recognized and rewritten. The protective mechanism. Consider Michael, 58 years old, former corporate executive. For years, he'd been saying he was too old to pursue his passion for architectural design. That ship has sailed, he'd say with a practiced chuckle that never quite reached his eyes. But during a particularly profound coaching session, Michael had a breakthrough. When pressed about what specifically made him too old, he couldn't produce a concrete answer. Just vague references to starting too late and looking foolish. Digging deeper, Michael realized something startling. His "I'm too old" narrative wasn't actually about age at all. It was a sophisticated protection mechanism. By declaring himself too old, he was shielding himself from the genuine vulnerability of trying something new, from the possibility of failure, from the discomfort of being a beginner again after decades of mastery in another field. Age had become his perfect alibi, socially acceptable, rarely questioned, and completely effective at keeping him safely within his comfort zone. This pattern of using age as emotional armor is remarkably common. It's not the years themselves that hold people back, it's the fear of vulnerability, judgment, or failure that hides behind the age excuse. Once Michael recognized this, something shifted. He enrolled in an architectural design course, not with the expectation of becoming a renowned architect, but with the freedom of pursuing a genuine passion without the weight of his self-protective narrative. The simple act of recognizing that his age script was actually a fear response in disguise was the key that unlocked the cage. Dismantling artificial barriers. There's another fascinating aspect to this neurological deception: the way we unconsciously create arbitrary age thresholds for our dreams and ambitions. If I haven't done it by 40, it's too late after 50. These mental deadlines aren't based on biological reality or capability. They're completely artificial constructs. Yet once established in your mind, they become powerful psychological barriers that feel as solid and immovable as physical walls. This is what psychologists call the threshold effect, the tendency to view certain age milestones as absolute cutoff points rather than the arbitrary markers they actually are. The effect is particularly insidious because these thresholds often operate below the level of conscious awareness. You don't actively decide to abandon a dream, you simply stop considering it as an option once you cross that invisible line. The research-backed method to dismantle these artificial barriers involves a systematic process of identification and challenge. First, you need to make the implicit explicit, to bring these unconscious thresholds into the light of awareness. Ask yourself, what specific age limits have I placed on my dreams? Write them down, be concrete. Then, for each one, challenge the assumption with 3 questions. Where did I get this belief? What evidence actually supports it? What counterexamples exist in the world? This cognitive restructuring technique doesn't just intellectually challenge the belief, it actually begins to create new neural pathways that bypass the limitation. When consistently practiced, it can fundamentally alter how you perceive possibility. The barriers don't simply disappear, they're revealed as the illusions they always were. And in that recognition lies the first step toward genuine freedom from the neurological deception of age identity. Breaking free from the unwritten rules that keep you small. Now, this neurological deception we've been discussing doesn't happen in isolation. It's reinforced and perpetuated by something larger, something pervasive, a social conspiracy of age expectation. Strong words, I know. But consider this. From the moment you were born, you've been surrounded by unwritten rules about what's appropriate, what's acceptable, what's expected at each stage of life. These aren't natural laws. They're social constructs, carefully maintained systems of belief that serve purposes far beyond your individual fulfillment. And until you recognize them for what they are, they'll continue to exert their invisible influence, keeping you confined to a progressively shrinking version of yourself.
Cultural programming.
Every generation has its script. The silent generation values duty and sacrifice. Baby boomers chase achievement and status. Gen X prizes independence and skepticism. Millennials seek meaning and work-life balance. These aren't just casual observations. They're powerful cultural narratives that shape how members of each generation view themselves and their possibilities. This generational identity trap is particularly restrictive because it feels so natural, so inherent to who you are. You don't question it because it seems like an intrinsic part of your identity. That's just not what people my age do, you might think, without ever examining where that belief came from or who benefits from your adherence to it. The sociological analysis reveals something profound. These generational identities aren't organic. They're carefully constructed and maintained through media representation, marketing strategies, and social reinforcement. They serve economic and social purposes: predictable consumer behaviors, workforce management, maintenance of social hierarchies. When you limit yourself based on generational expectations, you're essentially allowing yourself to be defined by forces that have no investment in your individual fulfillment or potential. Recognizing this manipulation is indeed the first step toward freedom. It creates a critical distance between you and the generational script you've been handed. It allows you to ask, is this limitation actually true for me as an individual, or is it just part of a collective narrative I've absorbed without questioning? This awareness doesn't immediately dissolve the power of cultural programming, but it creates the essential space for you to begin making truly autonomous choices about what's possible for you, regardless of your chronological age or generational cohort.
Evidence-based approach.
Dr. Ellen Langer, a Harvard psychologist, has spent decades researching the profound effects of age beliefs on physical and cognitive function. Her work reveals what can only be called the courage paradox. Those who reject age-appropriate behavior and expectations consistently demonstrate superior outcomes across multiple dimensions of health and well-being. In her groundbreaking counterclockwise study, Langer took a group of elderly men and immersed them in an environment designed to evoke their younger years. The results were astonishing. Not only did their subjective sense of age shift, but objective biological markers improved as well. Better grip strength, increased joint flexibility, enhanced cognitive performance, even improved vision. Subsequent studies have consistently reinforced these findings. When people reject the limitations associated with their age group, their bodies and minds respond with enhanced function. This isn't positive thinking or wishful denial of reality. It's a documented biological phenomenon. By rejecting the social script of age-appropriate behavior and limitation, these individuals triggered actual physiological changes. Their courage to defy social expectations literally rewrote their biological expression. Longitudinal studies tracking individuals over decades show that this effect compounds over time. Those who maintain age-irreverent attitudes in midlife show significantly better cognitive function, physical health, and life satisfaction in their later years compared to peers who adhered more strictly to age norms. The evidence is clear. Conforming to age expectations isn't just psychologically limiting, it's biologically detrimental. The courage to defy these expectations doesn't just free your mind, it literally preserves your body and brain. Practical framework. So, how do you practically begin to break free from these powerful social expectations? It starts with reclaiming what I call your chronological sovereignty. your fundamental right to define what your age means to you, independent of social prescription. Here's a systematic framework for this reclamation process. First, conduct a thorough inventory of the age-based expectations that have become your internal prison. Be specific. At my age, I shouldn't. People my age don't. It's inappropriate for someone my age to. Write these down, making the implicit explicit. Next, for each expectation, trace its origins. Where did you first encounter this belief? Who benefits from your adherence to it? Is it aligned with your personal values and aspirations, or is it simply a social convention you've internalized? This archaeological dig into the foundations of your age beliefs often reveals how arbitrary and externally imposed they truly are. Then comes the challenging but liberating step: deliberate transgression. Identify one age-based limitation you're ready to challenge and take a concrete action that defies it. Start small if needed. Wear something too young for you. Take up a hobby meant for another age group. Express an interest that breaks the mold of what's expected. Document your experience and the reactions of others. What you'll likely discover is that the consequences of breaking these unwritten rules are far less severe than you imagined, while the personal expansion is profound. Finally, build a support system of age rebels, people who are already living beyond the constraints of age expectation. Their example provides both inspiration and practical guidance for navigating a life defined by possibility rather than chronology. This isn't about denial or delusion. It's about mindset reconstruction, systematically replacing externally imposed limitations with internally generated possibilities. It's about recognizing that while time passes for everyone, how you experience and express your age is ultimately your sovereign choice. What your future self desperately wishes you knew today. We've explored the neurological deception and the social conspiracy. Now let's turn to something equally powerful but often overlooked: the hidden opportunity cost of age-based resignation. Every time you say, "I'm too old for that," and step back from a possibility, you're not just making a neutral choice. You're actively trading away potential futures, experiences, contributions, joys that might have been yours. And while the immediate comfort of staying within age-appropriate boundaries might feel reassuring, the long-term cost is often far greater than we realize. Your future self knows this, and if they could reach back through time to shake you by the shoulders, here's what they desperately want you to understand: the predominance of inaction regret. There's a remarkable consistency in the research on end-of-life regrets. Across cultures, across generations, across life circumstances, one pattern emerges with striking clarity: people rarely regret the actions they took, even when those actions led to failure or difficulty. What haunts them, what they speak of with genuine anguish, are the chances they didn't take, the dreams they abandoned, the possibilities they talked themselves out of pursuing. Palliative care nurse Bronnie Ware documented this phenomenon in her work with the dying. The most common regret she encountered wasn't about career failures or relationship mistakes. It was, "I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me." This regret was particularly acute around dreams abandoned due to perceived age limitations. "I always thought I'd have time later," they'd say, and then suddenly, later was now, and now is almost over. This deathbed perspective offers a powerful emotional leverage point. When you find yourself hesitating due to age concerns, project yourself forward to life's end. From that vantage point, which would cause more regret? Trying and perhaps struggling, or never knowing what might have been possible? The research is unequivocal. Inaction regret is more intense, more persistent, and more painful than action regret. Your future self knows this with absolute clarity. They're desperately hoping you'll make choices today that won't leave them bearing the weight of unnecessary regret tomorrow. The counterintuitive edge. There's a pervasive myth that starting late in life, whether it's a new career, a creative pursuit, a physical discipline, puts you at an insurmountable disadvantage. But the research tells a fascinatingly different story. What emerges is what I call the compounding effect of delayed dreams, the counterintuitive advantages that come precisely because of your age and life experience. Consider the data on entrepreneurship. The Kauffman Foundation's research shows that the average age of successful startup founders isn't 22 or 25, it's 45. Why? Because older entrepreneurs bring decades of network connections, pattern recognition, industry knowledge, and emotional resilience. They make fewer novice mistakes. They have clearer priorities. They're often more efficient with their time and resources. Or look at creative pursuits. Vera Wang didn't start designing clothes until 40. Grandma Moses began painting at 78. Laura Ingalls Wilder published her first book at 65. What these late bloomers share isn't just talent, but a depth and perspective that could only come from decades of lived experience. Their work has a richness, a nuance that younger practitioners often can't access no matter how technically skilled. Even in physical disciplines where youth seems most advantageous, older beginners bring unique strengths, better body awareness, more patience with the learning process, greater appreciation for incremental progress, and often more consistent practice habits. They may progress differently than younger learners, but not necessarily more slowly or less effectively. This isn't motivational fantasy, it's documented reality. The advantages of starting late are real and substantial. Your accumulated wisdom, your hard-won self-knowledge, your refined sense of purpose, these are powerful assets that can accelerate your progress and deepen your contribution in ways that youth simply cannot match. The question isn't whether you're too old to begin, it's whether you're finally old enough to bring your full depth to the endeavor.
Reverse engineering with intention.
Let's get practical. If you've internalized the neurological truth, recognized the social conspiracy, and understood the opportunity cost of resignation, you're ready for the next step, creating your legacy timeline. This isn't about vague aspirations or wishful thinking. It's a structured method to reverse engineer your remaining decades with intention, purpose, and the unique wisdom that only comes from your life journey. Start with a radical premise. Assume you'll live to 100 with reasonable health and capacity. This isn't fantasy. Centenarians are the fastest-growing demographic group in developed countries. Now, working backward from 100, map out what you might accomplish in each decade. What contribution might you make in your 90s, your 80s, your 70s? And what foundations need to be laid in your current decade to make those later achievements possible? This exercise does something powerful. It expands your sense of future time. Instead of seeing your life as mostly behind you, you begin to perceive the substantial runway that likely remains. A 60-year-old with a 100-year timeline isn't old, they're only 60% through their journey, with 40% still ahead. That's a very different psychological frame than seeing yourself as past your prime. Next, identify your unique wisdom assets, the specific knowledge, perspective, and capabilities that you've developed through your decades of experience. These aren't generic skills, they're your particular synthesis of learning and living. How might these assets be applied to your remaining decades in ways that create meaning, contribution, and fulfillment? Finally, create concrete implementation bridges, specific, actionable steps that connect your present reality to your envisioned future. What skill needs development? What relationship needs cultivation? What resource needs to be acquired? Break these down into monthly, weekly, even daily actions that move you consistently toward your legacy vision. This isn't just planning, it's a profound psychological intervention. By creating a detailed legacy timeline, you're literally rewiring your brain's perception of possibility. You're replacing the neurological age script with a new narrative, one where your age is not a limitation, but a unique platform for contribution and fulfillment. Your future self doesn't just wish you knew this, they're counting on you to act on it. Conclusion: the age-liberated you. So, there it is. The hidden truth about why you've been hurting yourself by feeling too old. It's not about the number of years you've lived. It's about the neurological deception that's created an age identity that silently sabotages your potential. It's about the social conspiracy of age expectation that keeps you small through unwritten rules you never consciously agreed to follow. And it's about the hidden opportunity cost of resignation, the futures you trade away every time you step back because of a number on the calendar. But now you see it. You understand the mechanisms. And in that understanding lies the power to choose differently. To recognize that your neural age script is just that, a script, not a biological reality. To defy the social expectations that benefit systems, not individuals. To make choices today that your future self will thank you for, not regret. This isn't about denying the passage of time or the changes it brings. It's about refusing to accept arbitrary limitations that have no basis in your actual capacity or potential. It's about reclaiming your chronological sovereignty, your fundamental right to define what your age means to you. The journey of age liberation isn't always easy. You'll face resistance from others who are invested in keeping you in your age-appropriate box, and from parts of yourself that find comfort in familiar limitations. But with each step beyond those self-imposed boundaries, you'll discover something remarkable. A growing sense of alignment with your authentic self, unfiltered by social prescription or neurological deception. Remember Michael, who discovered that his too old narrative was actually protecting him from vulnerability? Remember Dr. Langer's research showing the biological benefits of rejecting age limitations? Remember the consistent finding that inaction regret outweighs all others at life's end? Let these truths guide you as you write a new story about what's possible for you, regardless of the number of birthdays you've celebrated. Your age is not a sentence. It's not a limitation. It's simply a data point, one among many that inform but do not define who you are and what you might yet become. The moment you truly internalize this truth is the moment you stop hurting yourself by feeling too old. It's the moment you reclaim the full measure of your potential, your purpose, your possibility. If this message resonates with you, if you felt that spark of recognition, let it fuel your next step. Like this video if you found value here, share it with someone who needs this liberation, and subscribe for more insights that challenge the limiting stories we've all been told. Most importantly, comment below. What's one dream or aspiration you've been putting off because of age concerns that you're now ready to reconsider? Let's continue this conversation. Keep expanding. Keep defying expectations. Keep becoming more authentically yourself with each passing year. The age-liberated you is waiting.